After years of intense competition, high prices, and bidding wars, the housing market may finally be starting to shift. The question this morning, who has the upper hand right now this summer? Is it buyers or is it sellers? And what are we seeing here in the Atlanta market? Joining us now is Hannah Jones, senior economist with Realtor.com. Hannah, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So, I'll put it simply, would you rather be a buyer or seller right now?
Well, we do remember, that pandemic era of, high prices, quick home sales. It felt like it was impossible to even get an offer in before a home was sold. Well, we've seen that buyer demand has faded, inventory has increased, and as a result, buyers are in a better position they've been in many years, especially across the country and in Atlanta. So what that means is that we see that sellers are listing at more appropriate prices instead of listing high and cutting prices later, and buyers have a little bit more power. Though it does vary depending on where you are in the country.
Okay, well, let's expand a little more on Atlanta. What are you seeing in this market in particular?
So we see that Atlanta is in a balanced market. And so what that means is both buyers and sellers, have some power in the market. Buyers are in a better position than they were when there was very low inventory, but sellers are still not in a dire situation as long as they're pricing appropriately.
Balanced. What does that mean, and how does that compare to other big cities around the country?
Right. So we've recently introduced the Realtor.com market clock, which is this simple clock face that tells you based on your market balance, your pace of sale, and also price pressure, where your market falls on the spectrum from buyers to sellers markets. So a 12 o'clock is a seller's market, 6 o'clock is a buyer's market, 3 and 9 are balanced. And so based on these different metrics, we drop each of the 100 largest metros on the clock, and that'll help you understand, exactly what you can expect getting into the housing market. So we see that, markets in the South are more likely to be balanced, leaning towards buyers markets, whereas the Northeast and Midwest are more likely to be sellers markets, leaning towards, an early balanced market.
Interesting. Okay. So geography playing into this somehow. What about interest rates? How big of a weight does that have?
Yeah, so interest rates are a big reason that we have seen the market start to recover. So, interest rates started to climb in earnest in 2022, meaning that, the cost to finance a home, the cost to buy a home, combined with high home prices, really grew very, very quickly, which pulled a lot of buyers out of the market. So, as a result, as those buyers pulled out, we did see that inventory started to climb. And so, because of that, that is why we are seeing a little bit more buyer friendliness in the housing market. It's because, inventory relative to demand is quite high.
Do you expect this shift towards buyers to continue, generally speaking, or could it swing back just as quickly?
So we do expect to see these conditions persist, especially as financing costs remain relatively high. We do hope to see that home prices may continue to soften, that interest rates will come down, which will start to stoke demand, but we don't expect to see that pandemic era demand, pick up again, because we don't expect to see those pandemic era mortgage rates again. So we do expect to see a market that is a little bit more buyer friendly moving forward, though we do, it's totally possible that we'll see some oscillations back and forth as markets and prices and construction levels all adjust to today's market.
Okay. That's Hannah Jones, senior economist with Realtor.com. Thanks for walking us through it today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.